Welcome back to the Remote No Pressure podcast. Bill.
It's good to be back.
We got it.
We finally got our rhythm. The second week in January, and we finally got our rhythm. How many months was it?
I don't know. It's been a long time. Probably the last time you had an ending note, an ending thought in the outro.
No, I never have.
You always have the best final thoughts.
Now everybody's going to fast forward to the end of this to
yeah.
be disappointed.
Wisdom with Bill. I got nothing. But if you guys are watching on our YouTube channel, be sure to go down below and click subscribe and hit the little, it's a ding button, isn't it? Like a bell?
I don't know. There's a bell, but that's just for notifications if we release an episode.
Mm-hmm.
But I've heard those don't really mean anything with that platform.
Yeah.
But definitely click subscribe. If not there, then one of our many other platforms too.
Yeah, like Rumble, like Parler,
Yeah.
like Twitter, like Instagram, like Facebook.
Wow.
Like Facebook.
Like us on Facebook.
Like us on Facebook. It's so cheesy. We have to go through all that. The reason why is that's how we get monetized here at the Remote No Pressure podcast. We also have some awesome, amazing shirts. The mug I'm holding is not the official Remote No Pressure shirt.
But it's...
The mug I'm holding is not the official shirt or the official mug, but
here's the official mug.
And your coffee stays warmer than normal in that coffee cup.
That's amazing. I only had one sip left and it was still warm.
Unreal. Actually, it's just a regular porcelain cup. But if you order one, it would help us out greatly. Be sure to check out all of the merch at remotenopressure.com. We have a few of our Bob White limited edition t-shirts left. We have this is actually a mug, because my R&P mug is dirty, so I grabbed this mug. If you're on our YouTube channel, you can go and check it out, but it's actually a design by my son. Both of my boys have...
Will those be available?
You know what? I don't know. Maybe they should be. It's a little hoot owl. It says Elliot 2020.
That reminds me of Dumb and Dumber.
Nice
Hooters.
Yeah, nice set of Hooters you got there. Yeah. Yeah. But this is and then I got another one from my other son Reagan that made one when he was in the same grade, and these are like some of my most precious prized items. Like, you know, they drew these and then they put them on a mug. I think it's like the coolest thing ever. I use this thing a lot, but you can check it out on the Remote No Pressure podcast. These are not for sale. However, the Remote No Pressure. Speaking of QVC, I'll tell you this quick, funny story. I'm having coffee with my wife this morning, and we have an uncle, or she has an uncle he's a bigger guy. I mean, when I say bigger, he's like 6'5". Okay,
wow,
and he's not like fat or anything, but he's just a huge
tall
dude.
Man.
I mean, just a tall, thick guy, very manly man. So this year, Christmas was very toned down, and we just had a very small. I think we had 6 people at her uncle's house because COVID. We don't want to be stupid. Yeah. So we're there, and then he starts talking about buying this stuffed panda bear off a QVC.
All right,
that can walk. So it's a stuffed panda that could walk, and he bought this thing like 10, 12 years ago, before he was married to his current wife. And his kids were not babies. Okay.
Why did he buy it then?
Why would you buy a stuffed panda that could walk? So then he goes to the basement and he's looking for the stuffed panda that can walk.
Yeah.
And he gets all mad at his new wife because he can't find the panda that can walk.
Did she get rid of it?
Probably. She says, I don't know what happened to it, Todd, but I guarantee you she probably threw the thing in the garbage.
I'd be so upset if my wife just threw my random junk away.
Your panda? If she found your panda?
If she found my panda.
that can walk.
Don't get me started on my panda.
You can take everything but my panda. Yeah, anyways, but he bought it off QVC. QVC, sometimes when you're watching it like 1 a.m, you get sucked into that stuff.
They're good salespeople too. It's like, how have I lived without that?
I know.
I can't afford not to do that. That's where I get my line from.
You can't afford not to buy
when we're talking about our shirts on remotenopressure.com.
Yeah, but we're no QVC. We try not to be, but every purchase you make on the podcast on the website helps the podcast. So be sure to check out remotenопроpressure.com, our merch, and subscribe to our things. Leave reviews. That always helps. Leave reviews, and also it helps us become better podcasts. So be sure to leave some reviews on that as well. On any platform where you're listening, especially on YouTube or the comment on YouTube. It just really helps everything. With that. So this week in other news, according to the BBC News,
seems legit. Government-run news company.
Actually, this was on December 1st of 2020, so this is about a month ago, so this isn't new, but gluten statue, I think gluten statues.
Grunton?
How do you say the U with two dots?
I think
over the
there's
top?
something in the throat you do that with. I don't know.
The statue. It shows how ignorant we truly are here on the Remote No Pressure podcast. Very insensitive, very ignorant as we make jokes about COVID.
We just lost our 2 German listeners.
I would make a mockery of that, but I don't know any words in German, so I'm just going to leave it alone. But Gruten, we're going to say Gruten statue.
Grunton?
Mystery over mystery.
That's in English. That wasn't.
Oh! Did you hear about Alec Baldwin's wife?
Yes.
With a Spanish accent.
Yes. Make believe's not just for kids anymore.
Dude, I was watching an episode of her on Good Morning America where she's cooking and she's like cutting up a cucumber and she's like, what is that word in English? Cucumber. It's like, you're not Spanish or Mexican. Like, oh my God, it was hilarious. I should have did that one in other news. It's almost like Alec Baldwin's character is coming to life. All the comedy characters he's made over the years is finally it comes alive. But anyways, Gruden State mystery over missing phallic landmark. The monument was located on Gruten Mountain in Bavaria, southwest of Munich. German police have launched an investigation into the disappearance of a peculiar phallic-shaped structure from the mountainside in Bavaria, local media says. The 2-meter tall, that's 6.5 feet tall for all of our American listeners, wooden statue was apparently chopped down over the weekend, the Allgemeine newspaper reported.
Did they cut down the wooden carving of a phallic symbol?
Maybe
phallic.
Maybe the phallic thing had gender dysphoria.
Whoa, maybe.
It is known. It's not known who originally carved and erected the sculpture, which has become a landmark on the 1,738 meter high. That's 5,702 feet for our American listeners. Gruten Mountain, attracting many hikers to the area. This giant phallic attracted many hikers. Even online, map service Google Map has recognized with an S for our American listeners, not a Z in the word recognized, the sculpture's status designated as a cultural monument. No one knows how the 200 kilogram, 440 pounds for our American listeners, sculpture was hauled up the mountain either. One theory reported by German media is that the sculpture was an unwanted birthday gift carved by a group of young men as a practical joke for a friend. When the present was rejected, they pulled it up the mountain on a sledge, leaving it for others to appreciate. The monument, which was placed on the mountain for 4 or 5 years ago, had been left mostly untouched, but came to the attention of police after reports of disappearance over the weekend. On a Monday, police in Bavarian town of Kempten said that they opened an investigation, according to German news agency. We don't know whether it's a criminal offense or not. So that's pretty interesting. And I know a lot of you are wondering, like, how is Jeff going from one, was it metric?
Meters to feet?
Meters to feet.
The metric system to the imperial system?
How do you know that? You know, it's like, Jeff, I mean, he's just on the draw.
He's good.
I mean, I can calculate that stuff in my head so fast because, like Alec Baldwin's wife, I am German. What's the word in English? Feet? No, but it's all listed here in the article. We'll post the article up here. Phallic landmark from the BBC has been posted up.
What a dick. That guy who stole it, I mean.
What was it? What was it? The spy who? No, it was Goldmember when the thing's like flying in the air.
Austin Powers?
Yeah, Austin Powers, Anyways, start just going off on that. But in Bavaria.
Who would carve that, though? They'd probably call it art because those kind of things are classical for art. But
yeah, I mean, that's great. That's an excellent job for those who carved that out of wood. And that is the appropriate media for that particular art form.
Teenage boys like, yeah, you know what I can make out of this?
And then it becomes a monument.
Yeah.
Even Google recognized it as a monument. And you got all these people like looking into the wilderness.
Yeah, nobody's even looking at it.
Don't look directly. You'll turn into a wooden. Don't look directly at the statue.
Don't look in the eye.
You'll turn into a giant wooden penis. This is a PG-13 episode. We know that some of you people...
We're pushing that 13, aren't we?
Well, I mean, if you look at some of the pictures, you'll know why we labeled it PG-13, not for children. But that's an interesting carving. I'm thinking for the podcast we should do something similar. Maybe not a penis, but maybe some kind of monolith that we've talked about, the R&P monolith.
There's been a lot of monoliths lately.
We got to do something different. It can't be a monolith, but it could be something else that falls out of the sky.
What's two monoliths? It wouldn't be a monolith. It'd be a bilith? A bilith?
A biolith?
A duolith? I don't know.
Huh, that's
right in with it.
I don't know, but I think if we did two biliths instead of the monolith, looking at each other, and so it looks like a hallway. It's like the mirrors when you put them next to each other. It's like
infinity,
another dimension.
Whoa, we might just open a door to another dimension doing that.
We might. I think that'd be a lot
dangerous.
of fun.
I don't know.
Would you, if you knew there was another door to another dimension, would you go?
I'd peek in, but I wouldn't want to stay.
Really?
You don't know what's over there.
Do you think there's another dimension?
I think there are other dimensions. Yeah.
We've had this conversation several times.
That's where Bigfoot lives.
Bigfoot? Yeah.
No, I think there are other dimensions. So I mean, like, I can't say like what's in that other dimension, but I do believe that there are other dimensions that we can't sense.
Yeah, I've been really obsessed with UFOs lately, and I know that's kind of funny, but there's a special on Netflix that I've been watching. It's a movie. I was trying to think of the guy's name. Someone's probably yelling at the steering wheel right now saying the name, but let me see here. Let's see. Bob Lazar.
Oh, yeah. I watched that.
You did? What'd you think about it?
He's an interesting dude. Like, I've heard of Bob Lazar for years. He did a big interview with Rogan a couple months back.
Yeah, did you? That's where I found out about him because I love Rogan. And did you watch it on Netflix though?
Yeah.
What do you think he's telling the truth?
He's up in the UP too.
Really?
Yeah. In that special,
because FBI raided his house.
Yeah, up in the Upper Peninsula of Michigan. Yeah, I think he's telling the truth.
Isn't gravity as a wave? That's pretty interesting.
Mm-hmm.
The whole thing was, so I've been thinking about this a lot. We've talked about UFOs living in other dimensions.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe able to travel to, because if you watch the video, if you watch on YouTube or whatever, they have some of the VHS tape or whatever from the experience, and you watch it, and it is like there's no space or time. It seems like the things can just move, and there's no.
Yeah.
Do you believe in aliens? Now, you believe aliens are a part of a spiritual world.
Yeah, I do. I don't believe that we have other worldly creatures coming to, I was going to say America, coming to America, these illegals crossing our borders.
Oh.
No, I don't believe that there are like other worldly creatures, coming here and doing probes.
No probes.
Nope, no probes. But I do believe that there could be other dimension creatures who are stepping into this dimension and sharing technology.
You think so?
Yeah, I think so.
I don't know.
That's just my thoughts.
I know. One time I read that people who have experienced UFO sightings, been probed or taken up, or had seen a UFO or whatever, have like a 90% chance of dying from some like rare cancers or disease.
Whoa.
Don't quote me on that, but I read that, and I think that was probably a fear type article that I read, but it was pretty interesting.
I had not heard that.
A lot of these people have unusual, and I know like schizophrenics and stuff like that tend to be drawn to that kind of thing as well. So maybe I'm going crazy, Bill.
Maybe.
This week on the Remote No Pressure podcast, we're very excited to have Mr. Matt Zudweg, a local boy, as we start our Michigan series, focus on Michigan. I'm very excited about this series. I am from I'm from Texas, but I've lived in Michigan since 2002 with a small stint.
You've lived here longer than you have in...
Well, I did go back to Texas for a year, but for the most part, I mean, yeah, I've lived in this area because my parents were split. So I lived in South Texas, I lived in East Texas, I lived in North Texas. So I moved around a lot as a kid. So I've lived here in one spot longer than I've lived anywhere in my life.
Wow. Yeah.
And I sound like a Michigander.
Yep, you're getting that.
Nasally.
Yeah.
I hate it. I sound like Gretchen Whitmer.
Oh, that's...
No, I don't. I don't sound like Gretchen Whitmer. No, I refuse. But anyways, I'll have my Verners here and continue on with the podcast.
Fago?
My Fago and Pasty.
Pasty.
Pasty. Sorry, I didn't even know it.
Don't show them your pasties.
Don't. Oh, but I'm very excited to focus on the state of Michigan just because we live here and this is our state and we love it. Just like I love Texas, just I love all the states, but it's going to be really interesting to dive deeper into our local stuff. So welcome to the podcast. Let's light the fire. Today on the Remote No Pressure podcast, I'm very excited to have Michigander, Matt Zudweg. Thanks for hanging out with me, Matt.
Thanks, Jeff. I appreciate the invite.
Yeah. So, I'm from Texas originally, born and raised there. I moved up here. We talked a little bit before the podcast. I moved up to Michigan in 2002. So for the last 18 years, which has been an absolute blur, I have lived in Michigan. And you and I both know Kevin Melton, who played Oregon on my new record that's coming out. And it's really funny because Kevin moved to Texas a few years ago from Michigan. And so our publicist wrote up a big thing on the band members and everything, and it says Texan Kevin Melton. And I'm not considered a Texan, and it really bothered me. So I took a picture of it and I sent it to Kevin, and I'm like, dude, look, what do you notice about this verbiage? You're the Texan now. So that was kind of funny. But
well, I guess I could be a Texan too, because I did live in Texas for a while.
What part of Texas did you live in?
Yeah, I lived in Dallas when I was a kid for a year, and I actually have a lot of family down in Dallas and Houston.
Oh, wow. That's crazy, Matt. How did they move there? Like, how did they end up down there?
Most of my mom's family lives there. They moved there when I was just a little kid. And, and at one point we moved to Dallas, actually to Garland, right outside of Dallas.
Sure.
And after about a year, my dad said, "This is too hot and I miss my family. We're going back to Michigan."
Oh, that's funny. Well, I talked to Brian Kosminski. We both know Kos pretty well. Kos is the dude in northern Michigan here. But I told Kos
is great.
He is, and he's a connector, And I was like, "Hey, Kos, look, I interview a lot of Texans on here, and it's not because I've really focused on that, Matt, but because I have some really good friends there, and then relationships bud, and then they say you got to talk to this guy, talk to that guy." But I live in Michigan, and I told Kos, I'm like, I really need to do a series on Michigan anglers and Michigan fly tires. I really want to focus on that for a little while. And he said, well, you got to call Matt Zudweg. And so you're up in Newaygo. How did you get into fly fishing, though, Matt? What was that journey like for you?
For me, I grew up, bass fishing with my dad. We always had the big sparkly bass boat that went 100 miles an hour. And, so we were on the lake all the time bass fishing. And it wasn't until I was in my early 20s that I went into the Outdoorsman Pro Shop in Jenison and picked up a fly rod and started kind of getting interested in fly rods and stuff. And so I was newly married. My wife bought me a fly rod and reel for Christmas. And man, it was all over after that. I think within 2 weeks of getting that first rod, I sold all of my other bass fishing gear so I could buy fly fishing gear.
Yeah, that's
I'm kind of a passionate person. I go all in whenever I get into something. And so I definitely went all in on fly fishing, and it was kind of the be all end all for me for a long time.
Oh, that's great. Well, if anyone's on our YouTube channel, you can look over Matt's right shoulder and you can see all of his, not all of his fly tying gear, but you can see his fly tying desk. Now, are you a professional fly tyer, Matt? Do you tie for other people? Do you just tie for yourself?
I did tie commercially at one time, but I quickly realized I didn't enjoy that. And honestly, I don't love fly tying. Except for the parts of it that I do love, which would be the balsa poppers, and swung fly, steelhead stuff. Other than that, I really just tie because I have to.
Do you target a lot of steelhead there on the Muskegon River, or where you don't have to give exact
We do.
coordinates?
I spend most of my year guiding for steelhead. I guide for trout in May and June, and then I guide for smallmouth bass. Typically mid-June through early September, but the rest of the year is steelhead for me.
Oh, that's great. Yeah. What's it like now? I'll ask you this question, and I don't know if the rumor is true or not, but probably 10 years ago, I would go up to a certain location there on the Muskegon River, and I would fish, and I would have a 30 or 40 trout day. Okay.
Yeah.
Some of them were a couple stalkers, but for the most part, they were decent sized fish that had been there a few years. They weren't these dinkers, Now I go up there and I'll be lucky to have a 3 good trout day, 3 of them. Now, am I just a really sucky angler, or has it been really pressured?
Are. No, I'm just kidding. It's not uncommon in May and June to have 150 trout day swinging wet flies, which is kind of what I specialize in, is the 2-handed trout space stuff. That's not uncommon. But there's also days when you might only get 10 or 20 trout. And it depends a lot on water temperature too, and the water level.
Can you go into that a little bit about the water temperature and the water levels?
Yeah.
What are we looking for?
After the steelhead are starting to migrate back out in the spring, the water's typically starting to go back down to normal levels at that time. We get, high water in the spring typically with runoff and lots of rain. So as the water is dropping back down and clearing up a bit and getting warmer, we also get a fresh stocking of trout typically at that time. We do catch a lot of holdovers as well, depending on the year. But the trout stockers and the holdovers start biting pretty well when the water's getting close to 55, 60 degrees.
That's when they're starting to get more active and
yeah. And then, as the middle of June approaches, our water typically gets, close to 70 degrees by the middle of June. So once it's in the 68, 69 degree range, you start catching really mostly just the small trout. And then at some point when it's close to 70, I completely leave the trout alone for the rest of the summer and switch to smallmouth bass.
What's this now on is it the Muskegon where you're guiding for smallmouth?
Yes.
What's that fishery like? Because I've never fished for smallies on the Muskegon. I fished on a few other rivers, but I've never really focused on smallies on the Muskegon. Is it a pretty good fishery for that?
It's absolutely a great fishery. In fact, it seems like for a long time it was just kind of a secret. The secret's really getting out now. But it's a fantastic smallmouth fishery. Once the water's in the 68, 69 degree range, all the way up to 75, 76 degrees that it gets in the summertime, the bass fishing is really good.
That's really amazing because I've always wondered. Like I said, I love catching smallmouth. I really do. But I normally focus on steelhead and trout on this Muskegon River. I don't really focus on the smallmouth bass very much. So that's very interesting. Are you just throwing streamers at them, or can you tell us a little bit that process on targeting smallmouth? And I'm being totally selfish here, Matt. So let me pick your brain. How are you focusing on those smallmouth bass?
I kind of became known as a popper guy just because I love poppers so much. And especially when my Zudweg popper became popular, that's a tongue twister. But when that became popular, everybody wanted to come throw poppers for bass with me, which is great because that's what I love to do. Mm-hmm. But at certain water temperatures, if the water's 68, 69 degrees, sometimes it's pretty tough to get the fish to come all the way to the surface.
Sure.
So, typically I'm a person who loves to see the take. So I don't ever fish crayfish patterns or anything, dredging. So if it's a streamer, it's just under the surface so I can actually see the take, because that's just what does it for me. That's kind of how I've focused all of my guiding, just because that's what I enjoy as fishing, and it keeps me passionate about it.
Yeah, that's amazing. So can you describe this? What kind of popper that you created, Matt? What's it called?
It's called a Zudbubbler. It's basically, way back in the early 1900s, there was a guy by the name of Tom Loving who came up with a bug called the gerbubble bug, and he tied it in cork. And so I became fascinated with the gerbubble bug. This was 20 years ago at least. Fascinated with that gerbubble bug, and I started tying these balsa gerbubble bugs. And the funny thing, I was actually selling them in antique shops because I kind of made them to look like they were really old.
Uh-huh.
I didn't sell them as antiques, but I was selling them in antique shops, and people were buying them up. But I loved to fish with those, but they were very time consuming to make. I mean, my typical popper, I'll spend 2 hours on a balsa popper.
Wow.
So at one point, I was walking through Home Depot or Lowe's or something like that, and I saw these big foam floor mats that they use for kids' rooms and stuff.
Sure.
So I bought a couple of those and started cutting the same gerbubble bug shape out of the foam, and that became what I call the Zudbubbler. And
they're pretty effective then.
Very effective. It's a very different popping sound than the typical the cylinder type popper.
Uh-huh.
It's sort of a deeper sound, and for some reason I do way better on that blockhead popper that the Zudbubbler is than anything that has a round shape.
Wow. Yeah. What do you have one on you right now? Do you have one like on your desk or anything? Could we take a look at it? Or you could send me a picture too, but I'd love to see one.
Looking around. I don't think I have one right here. I've got a whole bunch of the popper bodies because I don't sell the actual fly anymore, but I do still sell the popper bodies on our website.
Okay.
So if you can kind of see what that is.
Oh, sure.
It's kind of a square blockhead body.
Uh-huh.
And I have a little cartoon on the front of our pack here so you can sort of see what they look like.
Oh, that's great. If you could email me a picture of that too, we'll put it up on our socials absolutely. As well. Yeah, because I have a few of those that are very similar to that my buddy down here, Denny, made up for me. Denny, his last name is Polish, so it's really hard. It's like Kozazinski or something like that. But yeah. he tied me up a bunch of those, and I've used them up on the flat a few times. But you have to have a pretty big smallie to take that. I mean, that's a pretty big fly. Am I right? Or
you'd be surprised at how many small ones bite that thing too. But typically, I definitely believe in the big fly, big fish theory for the most part. You can definitely, my biggest bass of the year always come on the Zudbubblers, just because it makes a really deep, pop, and it's a bigger fly. But, a 9-10 inch smallmouth will take it all day long as well.
Right. And that's amazing, dude. Why have we never met, Matt? I'm just curious. We have so many mutual friends in fishing and in other parts of our life. It's just crazy that we don't know each other. So
I guess we'll have to meet other than just on Zoom at some point.
For sure. Yeah. So are you planning on, you're a guide, right? So how long have you been guiding? Is it mainly just on the Muskegon River there, or?
I started guiding on the Pier Marquette. Was probably 2000, and I love the Pier Marquette. I hated guiding on it. Mm-hmm. It's just not my thing. Your internet connection is unstable, so hopefully I don't lose you here.
Yeah.
But it's just not my thing. It was just small and crowded. And, sometimes I'd have to row through 4 miles of water before my clients could even get out and fish. And I just didn't enjoy that. So I switched to the Muskegon in 2003. And oh my gosh, it was so intimidating to me after going from the Pier Marquette, where you kind of know where things are. The Muskegon was like this giant ocean that I had no idea how to fish. So I struggled for the first year or two guiding for sure on the Muskegon, but hooking up with Kevin Feenstra and, getting to know the river a little bit more, I figured some things out and quickly fell in love with it.
Oh man, that's amazing. Are you using a jet boat or a drift boat, or what are you doing on the?
I have a Stealthcraft power drifter.
Mm-hmm.
So it's an 18-foot, looks like a drift boat from the front end, but it's got a square back end, and I have a 4060 Mercury jet on it.
Okay. See, and I have, like I told you, I got several friends down in Texas, and they call me and they're like, oh man, I want to fish the PM, I want to fish the Pierre Marquette. And it's just, to me, there's so much pressure there, and it's so busy on the PM all the time, where the Muskegon can accommodate a lot more anglers. It's a very big body of water. Like you said, it can be kind of intimidating, but it seems to me like there's a lot less pressure on the PM, maybe because of its size. This year, it was kind of a cluster, though. I mean, I went out a few times. I guess it was the pandemic or something, and there were people everywhere. But would you agree to that it's just it's like an easier fishery or easier place to fish?
Yeah, you can fit a lot more anglers on it. I mean, I've been out. I try not to guide on Saturdays anymore.
Mm-hmm.
But when I have to guide on a Saturday in the busy fall or spring season, it can be tough to find a run that there's fish in that's open.
Mm-hmm.
There's sometimes 3 or 4 boats sitting in the same run that you want to fish. So that definitely is why I have a power drifter, so I can move up and down the river. I mean, I average probably 12 miles a day on the water, just covering water, whether it's busy or not. I just, try to focus on the places that have been fishing well for me, and the places where I've been spotting fish and I'm confident in that particular run.
Yeah, it's a great river. And when I went up there, I took my son up there on a Saturday this year. And then go to the normal boat launch where we go, and then we'd walk up to the shelves, and it was like there were so many people, like you said, on every single hole. Even if it wasn't a boat, there were 2 waders, people wading up there because it was pretty low water, and it wasn't enjoyable at that point. It was like, what am I doing here? I'm not relaxing. I'm gonna get in this fist fight,
Takes the fun out of it.
Yeah, it really does. Really. So where can people buy your flies at? I mean, you had their package. I mean, is it somewhere locally? Do you ship them out online, or how do you do that, Matt?
Most fly shops carried them for a while because Hairline was selling them, but Hairline discontinued them when they came out with that double barrel surface seducer, which is also a great fly.
Mm-hmm.
So I have no problem with that. So right now we sell them on our website, which is boneyardflygear.com.
Okay, well, we'll be sure to post up. We'll be sure to post that up on a link on all of our websites, and so people can find that, and they can find you. So, how did you? Why do you think that fly fishing? Why did it have such an impact on you versus spin fishing? I mean, for you to get some fly gear from your wife, and then you're like 2 weeks later not touching it and selling it or whatever. Why was that? Why do you think it's different?
Certain things just kind of light a spark in you for some reason. I've always been a very artsy person. In fact, a lot of my business during the off season revolves around art, which you'll see if you go to Boneyard Fly Gear.
Mm-hmm.
But I think artist types are definitely more attracted to fly fishing. I can't believe how many artists there are in the fly fishing world.
Mm-hmm.
But I think that has a lot to do with it, though. The whole artful aspect. It's like when I was into bow hunting, all I wanted to do was use a recurve or a longbow. That kind of fascinated me. And it could be just more of a challenge thing too.
Yeah,
artfulness to it though that attracted me.
Yeah, traditional bow hunters and fly anglers are very similar, I think. Matt Peisert, I don't know if you know Matt, but he said fly anglers are people who like to do things the hard way, and it seems that
absolutely.
way, But it's consistent. Like, I don't know, do you know Brandon Bales? He's on Instagram and stuff like that. So he's a buddy.
Amazing buyer. I love his work.
What he does with deer hair is unreal, dude. Like, anyway, but he is the artist, and he would never call himself an artist, but he is an artist. I mean, he's creating these unbelievable, maybe he will call himself an artist, but, it's almost like he doesn't know how awesome this stuff is when you talk to him, which makes it even better because it's like, he's super humble about it. Chris Barclay, who makes the fiberglass fly rods, another amazing artist, that we've had on the show. And we've had several artists. We've had Bob White, who's a painter. We've had a lot of these people on the podcast. And you're absolutely right. It's almost a spiritual excursion. And people who are seekers, people who are spiritual, people who are artistic, it's almost like a lantern that attracts those bugs. It's just like, we and when we all get together, it's like we all kind of know each other, but we don't. It's really a strange feeling. There's some knuckleheads out there, but for the most part, we all get together and it's like, wow, it's like I feel like I've known you my whole life.
Yeah, I agree. It's totally like that.
Yeah. Well, cool, man. Well, thank you very much for hanging out with me, Matt. I really appreciate your time. We'll put up a link to your website on all of our socials. But for those people that are listening, maybe they're not on our website or maybe they're driving in their car. Can you give them your web address so they can get a hold of you?
Yes, it's boneyardflygear.com.
Okay, awesome. Well, thank you very much, Matt. I really appreciate your time today.
Thanks, Jeff. I appreciate it.
Thank you guys so much for hanging out with us this week on the Remote No Pressure Podcast. Bill, thank you for hanging out with me.
Always a pleasure. Thanks for having me.
If you guys are listening to us on the YouTube channel, be sure to click subscribe below. Also, follow us on all the social media channels. Be creative. Find us on Rumble. Find us on Parler. I know some of you people are on Parler. See there at the gun. Probably shouldn't do that on YouTube.
It's like the Wild West still. Well, that's why we got to be on Parler.
This will be on the Rumble channel. This will not be my finger pointing.
Censored out on YouTube.
Finger pointing will be censored out, but that's okay. That's okay. That's how they want to play. Whatever. But check us out on Rumble. Check us out on Parler. Check us out on Instagram. Check us out on Facebook. Check us out on all the links because we love having you guys. And we're very excited about this year. We're going to, again, attempt to take this stupid thing on the road and try to really kill it. And it's been so frustrating. I say stupid because I'm frustrated with what's going on. Not because I think the show's stupid, but because COVID's really ticked me off in 2020.
COVID's stupid. But anyways, Bill, do you have any final thoughts this week? Oh, man. I wish I could say yes.
I don't mean to put you on the spot.
I put zero thought into that. I'm not even going to, make up a lie. I didn't.
Bill, you knew. I mean, you were off for 2 weeks.
I know. And that's the funny thing is I'm like, I should be thinking, nah.
Or you're like, I should talk about this next time on the podcast. And then you just forget.
It escapes me.
It escapes you. What is the word in English?
What is that? No.
I am Alec Baldwin's. What is the word? Esposa? Wife. God, I wish I would have chosen that for another news. But until next time, go fishing.